Hello, everybody. It is the 4th of July, and I hope you are having the most fantastic 4th of July ever. I can't thank you enough for spending this Sunday, this small hour of your day to spend with me to talk about your real estate questions that you have going on in the market. If you haven't seen, and just like I told you, the housing market was going to get a tad better as we started opening up things. And yes, we're seeing a little bit more inventory hit the market. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're heading for a crash, just yet. So don't calm down. Nobody's dropping their prices. There's not like epic, drops in the prices of homes, and we're still getting just as much offers. Just recently, I have put a house on the market, and I'm telling you, it went like instantly. I had so many offers on it. It was just silly, but we got it under contract. Oh, one thing I do want to tell you, and I want to say a very special thank you to every single one of you, because look at this. It came in the mail. I'm so proud. And I couldn't have done it without you guys. Look at that. What? It's so shiny. Thank you for the 100,000 and my award from YouTube. In my community tab, there is a thank you video. For some reason, when I went in the community tab, nobody really saw it. So I did make a special kind of fun little video just to say thank you to every single one of you. So it's there. Thank you so much for this. Today, let me put this behind me. Today, I have a very special guest because nobody from the United States that was a real estate agent could be on, but my friend Justin, I'm going to say his last name. I'm going to try it. Konikow, but it looks like Konikow. Justin, you might want to unmute. You're going to need to unmute there, my friend.
Oh, I got it. You did pretty well. I'd say 99% of the world says Konikow. It's Konikow. You can call me a potato and we'll still be friends. So it's all good.
So I'm sure I know your real estate market is just as hot as our real estate market. And everybody was saying, once everything opens up, it's all going to fall apart. So why is it still raging hot? Why is the real estate market still on fire? Tell us your opinion.
Man, it's a pretty in-depth conversation because I like to break down markets, right? I look at primary markets in Canada. That would be your like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. Then you have your secondary markets, which would be like London, Ontario, Canada, which is the heart of our market. And then tertiary markets, which is like where I live, which is Grand Bend, Ontario, which is a tiny little beach town. So what happens in each market is this trickle-down effect where you can go to Toronto and look at Michigan. And essentially, you just drive until you qualify. So Toronto's super ultra expensive. So then you go to Mississauga, then you go to Kitchener, then you go to Hamilton, then London, and Sarnia, and it gets progressively cheaper. I think the main reason you're not going to see a big change in that is people's buying habits are still reliant on supply and demand. And there's a lot of red tape in Canada in terms of bringing new developments to the forefront. And because of that, the supply and demand curve is pushing people that have made a lot of money in Toronto at looking at outside of their market for, well, where can I go live? And I can cash out of this place that I bought for 400. It's now worth 1.2 million, buy a house in London for 600 grand, pocket the cash, maybe start another business, travel more. And COVID has ramped up what we would have seen in 5 years to about 1 year. So I think the appreciation we've seen in some of the secondary markets and tertiary markets was 47% in the last year.
Yeah,
but I think that's going to taper down. Toronto has seen 10 to 30% growth over the years. I think the secondary markets like London and surrounding area, they would be at like the 10 to 17 mark in a normal market. So I think the 47 is going to taper right back down. But in Canada, anyways, we also have I think 1.2 million people coming into the country over the next 3 years. So forced immigration, less houses on the actual market, increased demand. I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
I don't either. It's the same, pretty much the same. Does Canada have the same supply chain problems? Like we have like this lumber shortage thing, but this is like the craziest thing. And I'm not a big conspiracy theorist by any means, but I've like seen numerous people posting videos of lumber just stacked to the ceiling so high that they can't even leave it in areas. So now they're saying, well, it's not the supply of lumber. It's the fact that we can't get enough people to ship the lumber to these locations. So I'm like, oh my gosh. But the lumber prices have gone down. Do you have that same problem in Canada?
It's identical. This is the second podcast I've done in the last week where I talk American, Canadian real estate dynamics, and they are identical except for maybe some density of population. The builders we represent, we saw those supply chain issues very early on. And I think what the consumer sector doesn't necessarily understand is, yes, futures may go down and there may be all this press release about, oh, lumber prices are finally going down because it's going to get clicks. That's not going to hit the consumer supply chain for like 6 to 8 months. On top of that, you know, what happened was like your home hardwares and your hardware stores that were supplying lumber that used to supply like 10 builders, they shut the doors and they said, we're going to pick our 5 best and we're going to take care of them. Take that down to who's actually installing the lumbers. The trades did the exact same thing. So not only was there a lumber problem previously, there was a steel problem, there was a windows problem, there was a kitchen problem. It's way beyond just lumber. Everything, right?
Roofing was so bad because my husband was in roofing at that time, and it was like they just couldn't get the stuff. They couldn't get the stuff they needed to do it, and they had a problem with getting crews to show up on time too, or even show up at all. So it was a little bit of both, you know.
I don't know if you had the same rules that we did, but we could only have one person working on a site at the same time. Where previously you'd have like 5 trades working on a house. So all of a sudden there was some big issues that way.
We didn't have that. No, not here in Louisiana. Charlotte Foster says, question, do you see an increase in price in demand for modular homes here in throughout the United States? Yes, because the same reason that he was just giving, that Justin was just giving, the materials themselves to get them to the modular home companies have increased just as much, but they're not like exponential. So you're still going to get a little bit deal. I'm going to tell you where you win on this with a modular home. Everything that's in a modular home is already going to be in the house. So you don't have any kind of building delays because of that, which ends up costing you more money. So all the building materials that you would need for a modular home, once it's delivered, it's all there. And you don't have to wait for, you know, certain kinds of things to show up. It's already condensed. So something that would have taken you, let's say 9 months to get built right now, with a modular home, it's going to take you 2 to 3 months. So Diane Wilson with this $5 super chat says, popping in to say hi, about to dig into some barbecue. Happy 4th of July. You had Canada Day. When was Canada Day?
It was on Thursday. So this is one of those weeks that we kind of lay over, like our long weekend got extended. So we're like kind of in yours. And that's why I wore a festive shirt, was for all of you, because it's the 4th of July.
I tried to do some like red eyeshadow. This is as close as I could do with red, white, and blue. I was like, I'm not going to go with the blue 80s eyeshadow. Oh, Justin, you know, before I forget, now that everybody is here. All right. So if you guys, once this video is published, you're going to see people responding. And it happens all the time where my icon will look like my icon, that I'm responding and asking you to speak to me through a WhatsApp number. I will never, ever ask you to contact me through a WhatsApp number. All my contact information is in the description of this video. You can send me an email at any time, but never, ever think that you're speaking to me through a WhatsApp number. It's frustrating. YouTube knows about it. It happens on all the channels. And I just want to make everybody aware, because it happened last weekend, which was pretty bad. And Eddie did such a fantastic job last week. And I don't know if you saw that, Justin. He ran the show.
No, I didn't see.
The week before. Yeah, he did a really great job.
That's awesome.
So what do you predict by the end of the summer going into the fall as far as housing prices? And do you think that there's going to be a decrease in demand? What are you feeling? How is your gut gurgling with this information?
So I'm actually going to answer something for one of your audience members as well, because I was reading the chat and Lon Moore said Hamilton is not a secondary market. He's correct. So that actually trickles into exactly what you just asked me. So I think the secondary markets in, you know, Hamilton, London, a lot of those markets were considered not as big as central metropolitan areas. They now are the primary markets. And a lot of the builders and developers in those markets and are looking at the land around those areas and developing those submarkets. So I think you're going to see a lot more transitions. A lot more Lons calling Justin's to move to London or Grand Bend because he's like, I'm sick of living in the city. I want to move by the beach. And then new people coming into their markets where, you know, maybe they're coming from outside of the country and they want to live in the big city and the proximity of that area. And they're buying into these markets that had a bit of a flattened demand because of COVID. I think right now we're surfing. And every 2 weeks, we're seeing these fluctuations in the market where the public reads the headlines. They think, oh, it's absolutely amazing. I can list my house for whatever I want. I'm going to get 20 offers over asking. And a bunch of them are falling flat on their face because the buyers are burnt out. The agents are burnt out. Canada just got out of their like official stay-at-home order. So you can go out and buy underwear. And before that, all you can do is buy real estate for a year. So the buyer demand isn't there as much. So I think you're going to see stability coming back to the marketplace. But I don't think if you time your purchase or your sale correctly in line with the data when you're making the decision that day, you can't respond to data that was 60 days old. I mean,
and that's the thing. So we see a lot of these articles and they're using information from the month before. I see it like this. So there was a lot of people that had rentals, and so they're going to be able to make these people move out finally. And I think a lot of those rental units are going to start hitting the market. I don't think it's going to flood the market to the point where it's going to make housing prices decrease, because we still have a very high demand. We also are seeing a lot of buyer burnout, like you were talking about earlier. But as they start to see more houses come on the market, especially with these former rental units, they're going to be like, okay, maybe this is time. So if you're timing the market because you couldn't find a house, maybe it'll be time, because now like officially June 30th was the last day that they could do the moratoriums. You're going to check in your state. Some moratoriums have been extended. So just check with your state. But I don't think it's time to like throw in the towel completely. Like, I'm never going to buy a house. It's very possible. And my sellers are being more negotiable. They are like looking at this as something that they should be doing. I do want to say thank you to John Pullum. I know that your little super chat was up there, $10 super chat, and he wanted to say congratulations on the 100,000 subs. Thanks for being so awesome. I appreciate you. John also says, you're welcome, Kristina. You're a rock star in the YouTube world. She's been having 500,000 before she knows it, soon after 1 million. Well, we'll see about that. So go ahead, Justin. You were about to say something?
Actually, before I say something, I'm going to double down on what he just said. I mean, we've become friends and started spending more time together. I think I stumbled upon you, pulled you into one of my clubhouse rooms, and then started consuming your content. You deserve 2 million plus subs. I think the quality of the content, and here's the reason why though, is you're not just giving out all of the things to other people to do for you, right? You said something with Benji the other day that I know is true. And it's, you care so much about every episode, right? That from the topic to the research, like nobody's going to care as much as you. And I think that that's one of the secret sauces in people like you. And I've mentioned Peter McKinnon before, that, they're not just doing it for the gram, as they say, or for the likes and the numbers. And I think the quality is going to get you there very, very soon. So that's what I was going to say.
Well, I'm very thankful for everybody that comes in and is a part of my channel. And I really genuinely do want to help them, but they don't want to hear about me anymore. They want to hear about their questions. Okay. Question. Do you have any ideas on the high level of mechanics driving people to move house in such numbers with such energy? Is it COVID plus WFH politics, social strife, or other social effect? I'm not understanding the question. Do you understand the question, Justin?
I think I understand. Like he's kind of asking what's causing this fervor, right? And if I just go back to when it happened,
yep.
I think the first like 3 weeks of COVID, we were just looking around at like our neighbors wondering like, is this the zombie apocalypse? Like we're like walking across the street, like, hey, don't come near me. Like, I don't know. Is this the end? And a month went by, and it wasn't the end, right? I think people started realizing that, the housing market was going to push through it. And it amplified people's view of how they were living. And the reason I say that is it happened to us, right? Like we were looking at, well, what is the form and function of a home? If you go back to the 1800s, cities like London, England were created because you worked at a factory. That's what you did. You worked your way up the chain, then you retired and you got a pension, and your house was literally just a place that you slept. But I was actually discussing this with an architect 2 weeks ago, and they were saying how now home design is indoor, outdoor living. What seasonality do you live in? How often are you going to use the outside of your home? Does the inside of your home integrate with the outside of your home? Can you open up, your windows in Canada 3 seasons out of the year and enjoy the outside? Well, if you don't have a screened-in porch, you can't. It started making people look at their houses a lot more, and I think that's what really put real estate on the forefront, combined with it was literally the only thing you could do in Canada for about a year, because they kept shutting everything down and opening it, but real estate stayed open.
Well, the current Canadians lead to look at what the Canadians have done here. The Acadians, that's what we call them here in Louisiana, and they have made the most perfect homes for outdoor, indoor living. So they should study that because it's perfect. I mean, they really have mastered the indoor, outdoor living style. Louisiana is all about it. Brian Smith says, do you guys think California real estate is going down or other states is going up like Texas? Okay, so here's the deal about California. I'm sure, Justin, you have your own opinion about this, but California is probably the most expensive state in the United States to live in, up there with Hawaii and Alaska. But here, the problem is that a lot of people that they say are doing this mass exodus of California are people that live in apartments and have low income working jobs where they can't afford to live there and work there at the same time. It's not balancing out. So those people have left California. The prices of homes and the availability of homes is still just as crippled as it always has been, if not worse. Those prices of homes have not dropped. There's only one city in California that actually reduced in cost of living. And that was Venice Beach. And the reason why it reduced in costs is because they have the highest number of homeless people that live throughout the whole entire town. There's tent cities everywhere, and they can't control it. And that goes again, it says exactly what I've been telling you, is that there isn't enough jobs that pay for the cost of living. So people have no choice. A lot of the people they say are homeless are not necessarily homeless like you think in your head, like people that are talking themselves or have mental illness. Yes, there's a good portion of them, but there's a lot that are just living out of their car, and they're going to work and they're getting dressed and ready at McDonald's to show up to their job, and they don't tell anybody. So it isn't just homeless like you think in your head. There is a good portion of people that are just trying to live to get by. They're living paycheck to paycheck and can't find an affordable place to live. So what is your opinion, Justin?
Yeah, I think you're going to see shifts in marketplaces happen over generations, right? It's like any other market where you'll have three types of people that will move into a neighborhood that maybe isn't so desirable. You'll have the first movers, which are typically like the artists and the creatives, right? And it's usually from an affordability perspective because maybe they want to open up an art studio or they need an apartment and they can't get right downtown because it's too expensive. So they go to this neighborhood, but you get a really cool painter, a musician, maybe a sculptor, and then a restaurateur, and they open up shop. And then you get the second movers, which are people that are a little bit riskier, like you and I, maybe if we're going for a bite to eat. I don't necessarily care if it's in the safest part of town because I grew up in a big city and I travel a lot. So I'm comfortable, but the general public probably wouldn't go there because it's still deemed like that area, right? And then you'll have your third wave that once we've established that that's a cool place to go and more people are investing in that area and the kids start going there, then the parents feel safe because now their kids are telling them about this amazing area that's been gentrified and the real estate skyrockets. Go to Toronto, go to New York, go to LA, go to anywhere. There's a metropolitan Austin, Texas. There you go. Right. And, people ruin everything. Marketers ruin everything in our space, but it's how it works. I think what you'll see is California specifically had some issues just from, say, a leadership perspective. And I'm not going to get into all that, but I think that caused people to, again, look at where they were living and could they do what they do somewhere else. I think influential people went to other markets and some people that had the means followed them there because that became the popular thing to do. New York was a ghost town for a while. I mentioned Ryan's like a good friend. I watched what was happening while every market was exploding. I was talking to him. He's like, nothing's happening here.
It's true.
To me, massive opportunity for people to get into the city. Toronto was the same thing, right?
Boston too. Boston.
There you go, right? Like cities that have like grit, right? And people that, the restaurants there were made from people that lived in those countries. And, you want to get an apartment there, but they're insanely expensive. When the market went down, everybody said, oh, it's dying. I don't want to buy there. I'm like, this one city that you've been trying to get into for 10 years, when it finally becomes affordable, you think it's dying and nobody's going there. Cities don't typically die unless the zombie apocalypse comes like we talked about. And then
or you're Detroit.
Yeah. Or you're Detroit. But even Detroit, right? I'm very close to Michigan. I go down to Michigan more than I go to Toronto. Massively. And do you know why?
Because
go ahead.
The realtors started flipping stuff and making it appealing again. They took some of these dilapidated areas and they turned them into something beautiful. And people were like, hey, I can build there. So they started taking all these old houses and restoring them one by one by one. And sure enough, they're rebuilding the cities. And they're still extremely affordable. You can find a really great house. I think some of them you can get for like a couple $1,000s, but you have a major renovation on your hands.
100%. But the economics of it still make a lot of sense. They were buying up the office buildings downtown that were vacant and did look like the I Am Legend movie scene. Mm-hmm. And they were buying them because you can't build them for the same price. It just happened in Calgary in Canada as well. And Calgary is a really tough market. It is not doing well. But Graybrook, you could look up the Graybrook Land Development Company, right? Sasha Chichus, good friend of mine, started.
Say that name again?
Sasha Chichus, almost as hard as my name to say.
Okay.
So they're number one or number two land developers in North America. And they started Liberty Village in Toronto. Liberty Village is probably one of the most expensive areas in all of Toronto to live in.
Are these rental units?
Condos, sale and rentals. It's a combination of everything.
Okay. I hate to cut you off because this is making me think of this because I'm like so ADD and I'll forget it. So they're doing this. They're a big corporation. They have turned it into condominiums that either you can rent or buy. So I don't know if you've heard about Blackstone and BlackRock and all these companies that are buying up homes that are brand new houses and they're turning them into rental units. This is one of the things that people are afraid of. Not only that, throughout the country, throughout the United States, they make these other like sub companies that are buying up foreclosure homes, and they always will bid $1 over the top of it just to win it. And they're buying up all these houses for rental units because they're trying to like offset the inflation of the dollar. So they're dumping in real estate. That's what they always do. Is that a problem in Canada? And are you seeing an increase of big corporations churning in these houses as rental units? There's
3 groups that are actually doing that. So we do a lot in the investment space. The first people to do it were REITs. So when the stock market tanked, REITs started redeploying their money into real estate. So, we had a 23 unit building that should have traded for like 3.1. And they came in, they gave us an offer for 3.3. We were looking at each other like, well, okay, sure. Like your metrics and your way of looking at numbers is very different. The second was foreign investment. And I know we spoke about this a little earlier. Foreign investment came in and they had a completely different set of ground rules, right? They were just coming in buying stuff cash. They didn't care about cap rates. They didn't care about cash flow. They just wanted the asset. Whatever, right? So they were the second group. And the third group was exactly what you said, corporations and conglomerates of business people that, just like Graybrook, looked at 35 acres in downtown Toronto and said, that's super valuable land. Now, it was not a good area. It was everything bad you could imagine about a bad city. But they were like, no, look at the proximity of that land to the city. They bought a building, one of the largest office buildings in Calgary that's vacant. Everybody thinks they're nuts. Typically, when people see companies like that and say they're nuts, you usually want to pay attention to what they're doing because these guys have Harvard MBAs doing analysis on these areas and these projects before they pull the trigger.
I know. Question. Snowdog Vlog says, do you think things will get a bit more stable in the market by next year, or is it going to crash like 2008? I have said it from the beginning. We will see a correction. I predicted a crash. I'm not going to lie. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, this is not sustainable. The housing prices are going up too high. There's nobody that's going to want people in their house with this crazy virus. And home prices are going to have to drop. And then as the government stepped in and offered all these different payment plans and they did forbearance for people and they offered all this other stuff, I was like, well, once this ends, that's it. Once they pull the plug on this, people are going to like still not have a job, Well, they kept extending it. Well, now it looks like they have given everybody a big enough cushion and we've had enough of allowance of people to be able to work and still have that cushion that I don't see necessarily a major crash, because what held up the 2008 market was kooky, ridiculous, stupid loans that people were given that they shouldn't have never been in the first place. And then this time, this market, the way the housing prices are right now, are being held up by cash buyers, and they're willing to pay the overage in cash. So it's not even that they're borrowing that money in order to purchase it. The second thing is, I do think there's going to be a stabilization. I don't know when exactly that's going to be. We still have a very shortage of supply of homes on the market. Once I see an excessive amount or even an evening out of supply, then I'll tell you then. But right now, we're still extremely short of supply of homes. Is it getting better? Yes. But I don't know when we're going to actually see stable or even lessening of the market. I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you. What do you say there, Justin?
I think I do want to point out there's a big difference between a crash and a correction. I think you answered it perfectly. I don't see a crash happening because if there was, so a crash is like 2008, right? People are losing their houses left, right, and center.
So bad.
I don't see that happening in Canada because our regulatory systems are a little bit more tightened. So it's hard to get money in Canada. You have to qualify for a 2% higher mortgage because it's government insured to even get the damn thing, right? So I'm going to say that I don't see a crash coming. The only way I would see a crash coming is a mutual friend of ours actually enlightened me on this, Ray Allen, and he said, it's supply and demand. So unless every single buyer that's on the marketplace all of a sudden gave up and said, screw it, I'm going to start renting, and they rented a place, and then every seller said, I'm putting my house on the market. They solved the supply issue, but there's no more buyers on the market. If there's any correction above 20% in the marketplace, so say values don't maybe match what you're seeing today, I don't see them regressing a lot, but even if they went down like 10%, the people that have the cash are going to come up and buy every deal they can. Because
right. Even in 2008, investors came in and bought all these houses that were garbage, like some of them that were dilapidated, they just bought them up. I mean, it was definitely a correction because it was overvalued at the beginning with these crazy, silly loans. We don't have that issue right now. And the other thing is that, I lost that train of thought. Just go for it.
No, that's okay. Somebody indicated if investors leave the market, then the market goes down. It depends, right? Because investors
they're not leaving.
Yeah, they're not leaving. I think
they're not leaving.
If there's money to be made, I mean, that's the business they're in, is making money. So
they want rentals.
Exactly.
Because the value of the dollar keeps dropping. And so they want to know how they can earn more money. So they want to use that money that they have and invest in things where they can earn more money, which is houses and rentals. And rent right now is the highest it's ever been, and it keeps going up. So anyways, all right. So Silly Mommy for Life says, is Florida expensive around the Orlando area? Ken Pozak. Do you know Ken Pozak? Justin?
We were on the clubhouse together. Remember when you were nice enough to come hang with us? He was there. So yeah,
Ken Pozak is a real estate agent out of Orlando, and he has said that the housing market in Orlando is on fire. There were some people that were kind of hurting with the Airbnbs for a hot minute, when the pandemic happened, started. So several of those people decided to sell, but they sold instantaneously. Of course, that market, the Airbnb market, is back and roaring again in that Orlando area because everyone wants to go to visit Disney. And so, it's still hot. It's hot. It's as hot as it is outside. Jeremy Blanton says, love the content. Do you know Jeremy?
No, I haven't met him. Jeremy, hit me up. I'd love to meet you, brother.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He has a YouTube channel for the Myrtle Beach area, and he's good. You got to hit him up.
I'm Googling him literally as we speak.
Oh, he's all over the place. He has a blog. He's got a YouTube channel. He's all over the social media webs. All right.
One comment, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but when people are talking about Florida, what I'm hearing kind of behind the scenes is I don't think that the immigration from the East Coast is going to stop down to Florida. Like, people are looking at Florida as that next New York City, right? So I would definitely be keeping my eye on that market.
All right. Smush Star says, REITs 3.5 trillion hedging against inflation by gobbling up suburbia. What are your thoughts? Thanks. What are your thoughts, Justin? I read articles all the time. Like one of them will say, absolutely not. I mean, they're here to help us. These companies are here to be our friends. You should be thankful that they're keeping up our home prices. And then you hear the next one, they're destroying Americana. So what is your opinion?
Not to read the comments. And if you've ever met a high level banker, they're probably not looking to be your best friend. They're very numbers driven. I think they're looking at leveraged investment in real estate, depending on how much you're putting down and the increase they're seeing historically over time. They're not looking at 5 years. They're looking at 10, 20, 30, 40 years, right?
Exactly.
And they have a mandate to protect. So I think they're just looking at it as a very safe investment class. If NFTs and Bitcoin went crazy and became very, very stable and had history behind it, you're probably going to see them investing in those as well, right?
Yep. I have a little bit of I don't like talking about it because never mind. We're not even going to talk about it because it triggers the bots. Question: is it true that the house builders are limited of how many houses they can build? I heard 4 per year due to the pandemic took place. that would probably be area specific. That has not been true here in Louisiana. We have some of the biggest, we have level construction, we have DSLD builders. They've not been limited to how many homes they could build. The problem with home builders right now is, this happened because of 2008, they limited how much they were willing to build because they lost their shirts in 2008 because they overbuilt, because they were like, oh, we need more houses, because they were selling them like hotcakes. And it was like somebody flipped a switch one day. It was literally hot, and then it just turned off the faucet. And then they were left with all these homes sitting there vacant, and they couldn't sell them, and they end up taking a loss. So builders said to themselves, absolutely not. We're not doing this again. So even though the market was really hot, they were like, we're not going to build. We're not overbuilding. We're only going to do X amount. And then there was a supply problem, so they couldn't build as many as they wanted to anyways. But there has been a decrease in building since 2008. New home builders do not make as many houses as they used to. And that's because of what happened before. They've lesson learned. Oh, mindful inspiration. Oh, we know her. Mindful inspired. What's up? What's up? All right. CC Moon says, Eddie, you want to throw the question? Will rent in California go down, and how fast or slow? Will rent in California go down, and how fast and how slow? I'd be lying if I told you exactly, because it would be area specific and city specific. So I would suggest reaching out to Dan Parker. He has a YouTube channel. Dan Parker is out of California. He's in the San Francisco area, I believe, or San Diego area, I believe. And you can ask him that question. Just put it on there. Say, me, you were in my live stream and you'd like to ask about the California rents. CC Moon says, what is the average time a person stays in a house? Do you know this? I don't know what it is in Canada. But tell us what it is in Canada.
I'd say 3 to 5 years is the most typical cycle. And the reason that we say that here is it's how people build generational wealth, right? They're buying their first house for $150,000, $200,000. If the market appreciates, even call it 5% a year over a 3-year period, and they're paying down their mortgage and they're making smart decisions, they take that equity, they move it into a bigger asset class. Now, as the market continues to appreciate, 3 to 5% of a $500,000 house is a lot more money than 3 to 5% of a $150,000 house, right? So they just keep moving that ball, and you're not paying capital gains tax on it yet in Canada. I know our government's really messing around with what they're going to do in the future, but it's a very fast way. You do 7 moves, a lot of times you can be mortgage free in Canada, but you have to be actively looking every 3 to 5 years in the right areas. If you can pick good markets and you can hit 10 to 14% appreciation per year, that's real money. So that's what I typically see.
It used to be 7 to 10 years, but it's really about 3 to 5 to 7. I would say 3 to 7 years. That's pretty much the average. But I'm always in the house for about 10 years. I was going to ask you, I just read an article not too long ago that was saying that millennials are pretty much getting priced out of the market unless they have like really high end white collar jobs. Is that a problem in California, in Canada, with the younger buyers trying to get into the housing market? I mean, you talked about generational wealth. Is this a problem for people in Canada if they're a millennial trying to buy a home, their first home?
It is, but no different than asking about are rental rates going to go down in California. Saying, well, are you going to buy a home is a very wide open topic, right? If you're trying to buy a single family detached home, yes, probably you're priced out of the market, because our single family homes went from $275,000 average price in 2013 to $600,000 today. Ridiculous, right? So what I'm telling people that are young couples, I'm like, well, you've got some flexibility. Condos were never really a thing in our market. Like London, Ontario, Canada, which is our big center market, we're like 5 years behind Toronto. I'm like, all of a sudden, that's your first time home purchase. It's a townhouse or a condo. Get into the marketplace. You can still get in there for 150 to 300K, do some renos to it. We have investors going in, bringing up values in similar buildings and asset types. So again, if you're open to, well, what's affordable to me? What's a good purchase and an investment that I may not be in for 10 years, but I can make really good money on? They're going to be able to get into a condo or a townhouse, maybe get in pre-construction, live in it for 5 years, sell it, and then buy that house that they want. Or maybe they're not buying a single family home in London. Maybe they're going to Lucan, which is 30 minutes outside of the city, smaller town, much more affordable. I think what you're buying is going to be changing dramatically over the next couple of years.
CC Moon says, what are your thoughts on employees quitting their jobs because they refuse to go back to the office? I think that I know that here in our area, a lot of employers are starting to be more realistic in the fact that some people were more effective working from home while others were not. So a lot of the employers are deciding to do like a hybrid model. And then other people are realizing they're worth more than what their job was willing to pay them. So they're going to get other jobs. I think we're going to see a big employment shift in the next 6 to 9 months of where people were and where they've gone to, because a lot of people are like, you know what, I don't need this job anymore. I'm going to go do something else. You know? And even how I do real estate now has shifted from a year ago, from where I was in 2019 to into 2020. I had shifted my whole business on how I do it. And, you know, I still do real estate. I still buy and sell houses, but I don't do it the way I did before because I just changed how I wanted to do things. It actually ended up being more profitable for me to do it that way too. And I get to help more people on my channel through my channel that way. Because my biggest thing, I don't know if you know this, Justin, but my biggest thing is to find as many affordable housing options for people, because we don't talk about it. And, you know, there always is this disdain of certain types of housing options that people are like, oh, I would never buy that because it's a piece of garbage. Half of them don't even know what the product really is and how far they've come along since then. Whether we're talking about manufactured homes, modular homes, tiny homes, there's so many different types of homes that is an affordable housing option for people, but they don't realize that it is affordable and they can get it, and it's not something they should really throw their nose up to. They're good quality homes. So that's what I do.
They're better built than some single family detached like spec built homes. Just so you're aware, right? We can go down a wormhole here, Kristina, because my father-in-law, you would love this man. His name's Larry Grogan. They have a Ford dealership in like the tiniest little town in Ontario, but he was actually into manufactured homes in a previous life. And the first house I ever sold was a manufactured home. So I did a lot of insight or research into, well, how was it built? Well, it was built in, you know, an area where it's climate controlled. How does that affect the construction of the home? Like, this is something we can definitely talk about. Plus, I'm doing a ton of research right now into alternative options. I got a client right now with a 60-acre parcel north of where I live, looking at doing a tiny home cottage development, essentially, right? And these homes are wicked. Like, they're so cool. And I don't think people realize that product type that's out there.
Right. And so a lot of the tiny homes that you're seeing that are attached to foundations are actually built to modular specifications. So if they're built to modular specifications, that means that they actually meet or are actually above what you would see with a traditional home built that was built with builders. So a lot of people are like, they think modular home, they think manufactured home, and then they have this idea of what a trailer is, which is 2-3 different types of things. So you have to really look at what look at the building specifications. How is it actually built? What are the building standards? Is it universal building code? Is it up to HUD standards? What is it? And then you know what you're buying. So in most cases, modular homes are going to be built to a higher standard than your traditional home building. And I love them. I hope that his tiny home community is actually a modular home built. So Mindfully Inspired says, will we ever see a policy that allows us to revert rural land into tiny home villages or smaller lots specifically for tiny homes? That is up to your local politicians in your area, because I don't know how Canada works, but here in the United States, every little city and town has their own building codes of how building restrictions, I should say, of how big or small a home can be and how many houses you can actually fit on one specific lot. So I always tell people, if you're wanting to do something like this, take your whole entire plan, your whole building plan to the local officials and tell them what you want to do and what the reasoning was behind it, and show them exactly what it's going to look like. Because in their brains, in their minds, they're like, that's going to be a trailer park. And it's not. You're building little homes for many people to buy affordable housing options. And this is a perfect way for them to build wealth. So just make sure you have everything in line, and you can bring it to those public officials, and maybe you can get them on board too, to be part of an investor into this. So it might offset some of the costs. What do you say, Justin?
Man, people are going to be thinking they're watching an episode of Star Trek, because I keep going down wormholes as well. But this question to me is an indication of the future. You talked about employment. I think employment's shifting because we're in a digital revolution. I think a job is good to have, but your real wealth comes from relationships, and you can have multiple revenue streams over and beyond your job. So moving into the housing side, I think if I was somebody that was looking to do something like that, I would be looking at different municipalities and contacting all the different people who are in charge there, seeing who had tenure, who was going to be there for the next 10 to 20 years, and who had vision. Because there are towns and municipalities that are rolling out the red carpet, and there are others that do not care. Understand that a lot of politicians, when they're making decisions on housing, are not actually caring about the official plan. They're buying the votes of the local residents, and then the OMB, which is the appeal process up in here in Canada and Ontario specifically, is where you would go as a developer saying, well, this meets the official plan. We need more housing. I want to do this. The local politician said no. You pay 50 grand, you go to the OMB, and they say, yes, that matches the official plan. You can go ahead and do it. Well, the politician said no, so he gets all the votes of the local residents, but you still get to do your project. The reason I explain that whole procedure is I think that will go away in the next 10 to 20 years. I think information is becoming more accessible. It's in front of the public. They see it. So it's
people are getting smarter. People are getting much smarter. There's 100%. No like the curtain has been pulled back on a lot of this nonsense.
And I think it's going to continue. And I think you're going to have to see municipalities adjust. And if they're saying that their official plan is density and affordability, they're going to have to actually provide it. So that's my.
They like to talk about it. Honestly, this has been one of those things that goes on and on and on. They love to talk about affordability, and when you give them a full plan of what you can do, it's like they stop returning your phone calls. They just want to talk about it. They want to raise money. They want to have fundraisers. They want to have politicians there, and it looks like a good idea, but there is no intent to actually put them together in many places because they love to talk about it. They love to talk about it.
Unless you make them think it was their idea, and then they'll say yes right away.
Oh, well, you're a genius. What do you think will happen to interest rates when the moratorium ends? Your guess is as good as mine, because every time that they come on there, they're like, we're going to raise rates. And then the markets go crazy. And then they're like, well, just kidding. We're going to hold them down for a little bit longer. And every time they even think about it, a few months ago, they just ticked up just a scotch. And I would have thought, well, that's going to make some of the buyers not, they'll end up stepping back because the interest rates went up just a smidge. Oh no, that made them crazier. They were like, oh no, we got to get it now before it gets really high. It was like, the phone was like ringing off the hook. It was crazy. But I don't know. I don't know what the Fed is going to do. They have no choice. At some point, they have to raise the rates. They're too low right now. And money is so cheap right now to get. And they keep printing it like it's like going out of style. They're going to have to raise rates. I mean, inflation is obvious everywhere. You go to the grocery store and you like $150 worth of groceries. And you're like, you walk out with 2 bags and you're like, what happened? What happened? I know Canada's like that too.
Identical. Yeah. I'm laughing because I think it's going to have to level up, but understand like anything under 5 or anything under 10 is still fairly cheap if you look at the historical interest rates, right? Like I know back in 17, 20% days, that's where things really change and you become in a saving economy. But I think for hovering under 5, it's very affordable money.
I remember my parents bought a house and they had gotten an interest rate at 13.7 and they were like, we got a good rate. And I was young. And I remember going, okay, I remember that number 13.7. When I buy a house, I want 13.7. I remember like thinking that in my head, and then when we got our first house, it was 7.2. And I was like, we did better than my parents did. Living in Sarasota said, Noah Ward. Hello, Noah. He says, me too. Where do you honestly see seeing the Southwest Florida market going, giving people moving across where do you honestly seeing the South Florida market going, given people moving across from the country? Where do you see it going? It's always going to go up. South Florida is one of those areas that even when the markets crashed, their housing prices were still extremely high. I mean, they never became affordable. Let me just put it that way. I wouldn't consider South Florida an affordable area, especially like in Miami and Boca Raton and stuff. But people are moving to Florida, Texas. Those are like the 2 hottest cities, hottest states in the country. We even got Canadians coming down.
My wife and I have looked at both of those areas. We spend a lot of time. Actually, we spend at least, I want to say, a month to 2 months a year in Florida every year, even prior to all this craziness. I love it. It's a nice balance of the weather.
What area of Florida?
So she grew up kind of going to that Naples area. And yeah, I never went away in winter. I was just a Canadian guy I always toughed out the winter. And when I started going away in February and going down to Florida for a month, I was like, why didn't I do this before? Like, I don't have to live in Canada in minus 40-degree weather for the whole winter. This is an option. So it's a global village, and I can do my job down there just like I can do it here, right? So
I have a question because I never really thought of this until you said it. Does real estate slow down when it's like bitterly cold? I mean, do people actually tour houses when it's like, negative 50? Like, I don't
So
know how
it
cool it is.
does. Yeah. So if we have a massive, no different than a long weekend, Canadians love long weekends. So I will not list a property before a long weekend asterisk unless it's in like a beach town because it's super busy during that weekend. But if there's a huge snowstorm coming and we were going to list the property, I'll wait because they'll pack up their shoes and they'll just stay home. And it's almost like a little vacation that people take. But if I'm working with buyers, I'm calling them and be like, hey, there's a snowstorm coming. Get your parkas ready because everybody else is slowing down. Let's go get us a house because we're not going to be competing with as many people. So the good agents go out and they make it happen in the worst conditions. But if you're selling or listing a house, I would wait until you're going to have maximum exposure.
That's how I became successful as a real estate agent in the worst housing market in history, is because everybody else was depressed because the housing market had been crashing. And I was like, I need to hustle. I have kids to feed. And so that's all I did every weekend. I hustled. I was like at all those open houses and everything else. That's smart. Good real estate agent right there, Justin. You're a good real estate agent. Do we have another question up on the board there? I know that I have a pretty active live stream.
The chat is popping. I'm trying to keep up with it.
Yeah.
I got to stay focused on you because I just get distracted.
Tell everybody Justin's doing a good job. He came in and I appreciate him on the last minute. I appreciate you. Because REITs are better on future price rent increase ROI for shareholders, REITs will have to unload if the numbers shift. What will happen to if the market is to shift to negative 10, 12, 15%?
What would have to happen? Just more demand, more supply than demand. We're seeing it right now. So in the multifamily space in London, all of a sudden everybody's listing multifamily properties because I think they had a really hard time selling them because there is a eviction ban right now in Canada, or in Ontario, I should say. So, we have 4plexes and 6plexes, and we're looking at areas and saying we're not listing right now because there's 5 that are on the market. So those, I'm seeing adjustments in prices where maybe they'd expect a 4plex to sell for $950 and it sells for $875. So you are seeing an adjustment there. Now, if you go to the bigger units that the REITs are holding, I think it's the same thing. I think it's either buyer confidence in a market drops. You're just not seeing as fervent interest. And we track cap rates. So if people are buying at a 5.5 cap, the second it gets under 5 is really where it's not going to make sense from a long-term buy and hold perspective. And I don't want to get too complicated with the language here, but I think you'd have to have buyer demand wane and more supply come onto the market. You'll just see a lot more buildings listed, and then people that are in a position that they have to sell are going to have to sell at lower rates, and that'll affect the cap rate because a comp is a comp. And if that building just sold, that was worth $100,000 a unit, just sold for $80,000 a unit, well, that's going to set the bar for the next one. And if they're poorly managed and they keep selling, I think you will see adjustments in these marketplaces.
Well, that's a good catalyst for the United States. We don't have that yet. So if you start seeing that in your area, I get a good, close relationship with one of your real estate agents in your area, and they can start looking and pulling those numbers. But we have not seen that here in Louisiana yet, not yet. Oh, except for, I will take that back. In New Orleans, we had an issue with that because of the tourism, and a lot of people that had rental units and that would use Airbnbs. They had that was an issue there, but it all came back. It all sold. Are there condos out there for a large family? Going to look it up. Just thought about it. Yeah, there's condos for. I mean, you can get a condo that's 2,000-3,000 square feet. It just depends. I mean, what are you willing to spend? We have townhomes here that are over 2,000 square feet. We have condos that are 2,000 square feet. You have those there too, Justin, right?
We do. I look at efficiency of space too. Sometimes you can have a condo that's 1,600 square feet that is much more usable than a condo that's 2,000 square feet. Buying the biggest option is always the best, right?
That is like very true here. For our 2-story homes, you can have like 2,500 square foot home that's a 2-story, and it's such wasted space. Yeah. And then you can have a 2,000 square foot home that's one level, And it was the best use of space, tons of closets and everything. And I'm like, 2-story houses here in Louisiana don't sell as well. Isn't that weird? Living in Sarasota, Florida, what is one little piece of advice you would give to both Americans and Canadians who are looking to purchase a home right now? What is your one piece of advice there, Justin?
Don't get emotional. Like, just keep it really simple. I think I equate real estate sometimes to watching 5-year-olds play soccer, where you'll see a group of kids and the ball's in there somewhere and the ball gets kicked out and the whole group moves. The people that I see succeed the most, they make decisions independent of their emotions. They have an idea of what they want and why they want it. And if it's not the right timing or they don't find the right product, they don't force a square peg into a round hole. So I think if you're working with good people that aren't just selling you something to get a paycheck, you'll find the right product, and look at a high level, look at the area you're investing in, understand how long you're probably going to hold that asset for, what use it serves for you, and also don't overspend. So I take my clients' budgets and I tell them, like, chop off 25% of your pre-qualification and let's aim for mid to lower tier. And if you find something that ticks all the boxes and is not go, fine, that's your decision to make. But I also think people overextend, and I would caution them to be a little bit more conservative with their purchases.
Yeah, and trust your gut. I know you say don't be emotional, but trust your gut. If your gut says this ain't right, then it ain't right. That's one of those things that, like, people are like, you shouldn't do this. And I was like, I'm doing it, and every time I've ever done anything, it's because I trusted my gut and I knew it was the right decision.
Well, I think they go hand in hand, Kristina. I think like your gut will go hand. If you're properly prepared, just like when you do your YouTube videos, if you're prepared, you can go off the cuff because you did the work. And I think it's the same thing with a purchase. Don't get stuck on the one reason not to do something, and there's 99 reasons to. Right? I think a lot of people will look at the best investment in the world and they'll talk themselves out of it because of one reason. I'm like, what if a meteor falls on me right now? Because that could actually happen, right?
I know. I talked to a lady once and she was worried about all sorts of stuff. She's like, well, what about tornadoes? Or what about hurricanes? What if there's an earthquake? And I'm like, wow, you're putting a lot on the plate. There's a lot of
dinosaurs.
What ifs right there. Yeah. Zombies, Question: what is the minimum amount of cash needed for banks to ignore income for $350,000 to $500,000? What is the minimum amount of cash needed? That is dependent on your debt to income ratio. I mean, there is no, like, I can't give you a roundabout number because I don't know your actual. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead with your
$300,000 to $500,000. If you're buying it cash 100%, then they're not going to care about your income. That's just what I see in Canada, right?
Right. And what is the minimum amount of cash for banks to ignore the income for? I guess I misunderstood the question.
Well, I think the question made sense, right? I think they're talking down payment. Like, if I hit a 50% threshold, are they not going to care about my income? Like, banks are in the business of risk management. They're not lending money to you. They're trying to mitigate risk. So I think they're always going to have to look at the person they're lending the money to from an income perspective, unless you're buying it cash. Right.
Okay. Because I was like, the way you answered that, I'm like, wait a minute. They're still going to have to figure out if they're getting a loan. I'm like, wait a minute. So I was sorry.
Unless you're not getting a loan, I think is the
right.
Only place where they're not going to require it.
They're not going to require. They're always required. I mean, we're refinancing. This is one of those things. We're refinancing a house. The house is valued at $280,000. We're refinancing it, and it's only $106,000. And we have literally had to pull crowns out of our teeth to get this thing refinanced. It's ridiculous what we've had to go through. And we went through the whole refinance process for them to very end to go, you know what? You have 2 meters on there. We're not going to go ahead. We're not doing a loan on your house. What? What? I mean, this was like weeks and weeks and weeks of us doing all the things they required of us. And then they go back out one more time. And they're like, no, never mind. We're not doing it.
Banks are weird. Banks, like, the way that they do lending policies, I think we're seeing a shift. I don't know how private lending works in the States, but a lot of private money has come into our marketplace and is funding deals that make a ton of sense. They're just very logical deals. They're looking at the people and looking at their reputation in the marketplace, and they're paying higher interest rates, but they're a lot easier to fund deals with than some of the A banks, where the A banks, you're a line on a spreadsheet somewhere. And if you don't match up to the algorithm or the system, it's a nightmare to get a deal funded, right? So I think there's going to be more of that coming.
I'll get to Lamar's question in just a second, but I just saw a company out of Seattle, Washington, that they know that it's very difficult for you to get offers accepted, especially if you're doing like 100% financing. So they're willing to take on that risk to sweeten your deal and purchasing a home. So they'll give you the cash and then they'll roll in the package at the end. So they'll roll it like they're taking that risk. They're giving you that $50,000 or $60,000 cash, so it looks like you're putting 20 to 30% down, and then they'll take the whole entire deal and roll it into a 30-year mortgage. I'm like, wow. Yeah, Lawnmower says, Justin, is it possible to find a property in South Lake or Ontario that is not near Tim Hortons?
It is. Just how far do you want to be from a Tim Hortons? I think that's a double-edged sword, right? Yeah, Tim Hortons is like our crazy coffee shops in Canada. There's a lot of like rural towns, maybe in a population of 200, but anywhere with a population of 2,000, you have at least one, if not two, Tim Hortons around you somewhere.
Lawnmower is one of my commonologists. He always has the most witty, creative.
Oh, he's funny. I saw him in the chat before and I commented something back to him. I like him a lot, actually.
Yeah, Lawnmower is a great commonologist. I don't even know if that's a real term. Do we have any more questions there, Eddie? Has everybody told Justin what a great job he is doing? I want to thank Justin for doing such a great job. Have you seen any comments in the chat that you wanted to comment on there, Justin?
Not particularly. You got a great tribe of people. I mean, I appreciate you having me on. I love chopping it up with people, and I think you're one of the real ones. So anything I can do to help. I'm not perfect. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'll tell you exactly how I feel. So
you seem pretty darn smart to me. I've had some people on here that I'm like, wow, I'm like having to answer for them because they have no idea how the real estate market works.
Yeah, good people around me. I just absorb a lot of information and regurgitate what other people are teaching me.
I think that's the smartest thing you could do is when you're always in that mind of learning instead of trying to be the smartest person in the room. Those are the smartest people, the ones that are continue to learn. Look at all the people saying you're doing a great job. Oh, Beards in Review. I haven't seen him in forever. Moving back to Houston, and I'll probably have to rent. Oh, rent in Houston right now is extremely high. I don't know what area of Houston, but if you're looking for a real estate agent for renting a house, let me know, Beards and Review, and I'll hook you up with a couple of real estate agents I know in the area. And that goes for anybody in the chat. If you're having a hard time finding a real estate agent that can actually work for you, that isn't working against you, and you need somebody trusted that isn't going to give you a bunch of smoke. I know I'm not disparaging real estate agents. I'm just saying there are some that are just not necessarily the best. I only work with the best people. I have a group with over 4,000 agents. If you're having trouble finding a real estate agent, I can hook you up with one. Just email me. All my contact information is in the description of my video. Question, rent or buy, which one is better? That is dependent on how much rent is towards mortgage payment. So you have to compare the two. I would work with a real estate agent in your area that can compare the cost of both. What do you say, Justin?
For me, I still think it's one of the easiest ways for somebody to get into the marketplace and achieve wealth because you're not paying tax on the income that you're spending and it's leveraged, right? So if I take $100,000 and I invest it into the stock market and I take $20,000 and I invest it into the real estate market, I get the same appreciation on both assets, but one I'm only 20% invested in. So I think purchasing real estate is one of the smartest ways to get wealthy, and it's undefeated. I'm not saying that as a real estate agent. I talk people out of deals all the time, but some of the wealthiest people I know run multi-million-dollar businesses and they made the bulk of their money by owning real estate over long periods of time.
But you have to be smart about this. You have to be smart. If you're paying $650 a month in rent, and then your mortgage payment's going to cost you $1,200, and it's extending you out to the nth degree, and you can't even afford to do anything else but buy a house, and you have no furniture in it. Don't do that. Obviously, don't do that. Just hurry and save as much of you as you can until you have a good down payment. You can bring that payment down. You did too. During the last crash, people they got a loan acceptance of 350,000 when they really should have bought a house that was 150,000.
Yep.
But they wanted the big house and they got more house than they could afford. So if you cannot afford that payment, that monthly payment, that includes insurance, that includes your taxes, make sure all those payments are rolled into one. And you have to think about the maintenance of that house. There's things you're going to have to do to that house, like mowing the lawn and everything else. Put that all in the pros and cons list and price that all out and budget it all out. And if it doesn't match where you need it to be, don't buy a house. Don't, like that, then you're going to be in and over your head. CC Moon says $1.99 super chat. How do you price out a room for rent for a roommate? How do you price out a room for rent with a roommate? I've never done that, honestly. How do you do that?
I go to CMHC, or I'll look at standard rental statistics in the area. If it's so we do have a student housing market in London, and I can tell you off the back of my hand exactly what those rental rates are, right? For entry level product, it's about $450 a room. For very nice product, about $750 a room. You have restrictions on the amount of bedrooms you can have in a house, but in your market, I would look at people that are doing it by the room. I would call property managers and I would ask them, hey, what's the going rate for a room? Or I would just hire the property manager to manage it, because getting a bad renter is the quickest way to lose a lot of money in real estate. So
absolutely. I live in an area that is like, I could walk out my door and I see goats and pigs and horses running. And I always see donkeys and stuff. I'm like, hey kids, look at that jack. Did you see that jack?
That's awesome.
Anyway, but people don't rent rooms. They do rent out. People will remodel their garage and they will rent out that little area as like a studio apartment. And that's still like $400 a month. $400 for a renovated garage. It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, listen, we're heading. Oh, wait, we got one more question. How do I start out buying? Oops, where'd it go? Eddie does the questions. I can hear him grumble in the back question. How do I start buying land in a modular home in the Bay Area with a government-backed loan? So if you're in the Bay Area, give me an email and I will connect you with a real estate agent, because every state is going to have a different idea when it comes to modular homes. Here in Louisiana, you can work with a modular home company that will find you a piece of land and work with you together to purchase both of those things at the same time. It would be a new construction loan. I don't know how it's going to be working for the Bay Area. So I would have to connect you with a real estate agent in that specific area. Question: what is one of your funniest home transactions?
Oh, I'm trying to think of what one of my. So it's actually the manufactured home that I sold, the first one ever. It was on the market for 7 years before I got it with another agent. The seller would not change the price at all. I had it listed for sale. It was 3 days before the expiry. I'm like, I'm totally getting fired. Like, this was the first listing I ever had. So probably not the best sign for this career moving forward. And I showed it to a gentleman, and showing was going really well until we went in the basement, and there was about like 2 feet of water in the basement, like legitimate like pond. And I'm like, well, I guess that's that, right? Like, this listing's going to die. And it just turned out that he had known how to deal with waterproofing basements, and he was not concerned at all about it. We put the deal together, and he actually ended up being a great guy. But that's a good lesson, I think, from a agent's perspective or even a consumer's perspective, is you don't write the narrative. Sometimes you think you know what other people want. You don't. Like, you're there to provide a service, be transparent, be honest, protect them from, making mistakes or bad real estate agents, because there's a lot of them out there. But ultimately, it's up to the consumer to make the decision. You're not the one that's actually writing the checks. So advice to real estate agents: stop pretending like it's your money. Be of service to people. They are the hero of the movie, not you. You are the guide.
Yep. My funniest transaction was a girl who kept emailing me, telling me that she wanted to buy a house in the United States and she was in Germany. And I swore up and down from the beginning to the end that this girl didn't exist. And one day, like, she was like, she went through the whole inspection period and everything else. And then one day she just showed up. I'm like, I really did not think you were real. I thought this was like a Nigerian prince type of situation. She goes, I figured that was. Do Justin have a YouTube channel? Can you drop his link? Do you have a YouTube channel, my friend?
I do, yeah. So I just recently launched one. So if you go to Justin Konikow on YouTube, it's named right after myself. I'm super pumped about it. And again, Kristina's fingerprints are all over it. I was dealing with a land deal actually 2 weeks ago. I think I told you about this the other day on Benji's channel, and it was going sideways. And I'm like, man, people need to understand how to approach this. I landed on one of your videos. So a video that we're putting out is inspired by you. So you'll see that video coming out, I think tomorrow or Tuesday. So I'm really excited.
I'll take a look at it and see if it's any good.
You let me know. It's going to be terrible, I'm sure, but it is my name. So you can find me on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a smart thing. Well, Justin, thank you so much. I want to tell everybody happy 4th of July. Please be safe. Please be safe. And if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, or you can hit the thumbs down if you think we were garbage, but I don't think we were garbage. I think Justin did a fantastic job, and I want to say thank you. And happy 4th of July, everybody. Be safe out there. Bye. Thanks, Justin. Kristina. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you.
You're awesome.
You're awesome. No, you're awesome.
Are you, wait, question for you. This storytelling room tomorrow. You're an amazing storyteller. Are you going to pop your face into that one?
I probably will.
Okay. I'll think you look crazy. Keep doing work. And everybody, give her a comment. Make sure you're subscribed. If not, lose my number. See ya.
Bye, y'all.
See you guys.
That's it.